Hey everybody, it's Dick here. Today I'm on the all-new 2019, if I can stay on it, Honda CB500X. Hey everybody, it's Dick here. Today I'm on the all-new CB500X by Honda. It is a 471cc parallel twin, boasting just under 50 horsepower. Changes from the previous version include a new slipper clutch, 19-inch alloy front wheel, LED headlights and indicators, new body panels that claim to funnel air down to the engine and heat away from the rider, taller adjustable windshield, a new display including a gear indicator. They played with the engine a bit, including adjusting valve timing, which is said to improve mid-range torque, which lowers the exhaust note from the previous version. Side by side, the changes are more apparent. The new version sits higher, the new side panels make it wider, the 19-inch wheel is clearly a huge jump from the 17-inch wheel that came before. The nose job on the 2019 perhaps hints to a shying away from the adventure bike enthusiasm celebrated in the previous version. The cockpit in the old version looks dated and budget compared to the update. I was never a fan of the stock display and indicators that came on the old CB500X. I am impressed with the fit and finish of the new version. I'm especially happy to see a plug for a power port and the crossbar on the adjustable windshield for sat-nav or other devices. I just hope I'm not being seduced by its good looks. And the new version sits higher and prouder. Let's see if that's warranted. Hey everybody, it's Dick here. Today I'm on the all-new 2019 CB500X. If you've seen my other videos, if you've met me in person, you'll know that the CB500X is one of my favorite bikes of all time. I don't own one, but I'd probably convince a bunch of people to buy one. At least I know of a handful of people who've purchased one after talking to me about it. I was just in the dealership and I think I sold one to a guy who was waffling about it just being a 500. It's going to be an interesting ride here in London today because a couple of the train lines are down and everyone's driving today, so I'm wondering how it's going to be out on the motorway. Definitely around town it's been very congested, but maybe it'll let me see what the filtering capability of the new version is. Right off the bat, this bike feels very different than the CB500X that I've known and loved. It's taller, these fairings are bigger. On its face, when I saw it at the motor show, I saw that Honda had probably watched one of my videos and addressed a lot of the concerns I had about the older version. Right off the bat, you got a taller windshield, you got this kind of grab rail here so that you can mount sat-navs and other devices, phones and things. There's a new display that includes a gear indicator, which I always love. The other thing I've noticed too is that they're including a new stock bin indicators off of the Africa Twin. I really did not like the old indicators on the CB500X or any of the 500 line. It was just those old, let's go to the stock box and throw them on the bike and save some money. But it looks like the new stock box and the new stock bin includes the LED lights off the Africa Twin, and that's a grand improvement in terms of aesthetics. Unfortunately, for all the new information on that display, it's so f***ing reflective that all I see is my big, stupid high-vis helmet in it. I wonder if you guys see that too, but I'm just looking at a reflection of my high-vis helmet, and I have to kind of turn my head to see any information. So even though there's all that great new information there, I can't see it. What is wrong with putting a non-reflective plastic over that screen? There's a little visor here that's, I guess, meant to hide the sun, but it's not doing shit. So that's a real letdown. I don't really think that these beefier tanks are making it feel beefier is doing it any favors. You know, a lot of people were saying make it more like the Africa Twin, and I think I might have said that, or at least insinuated that, bring it up to Africa Twin. I didn't actually mean make it as big as the Africa Twin, or play those proportion games in your AutoCAD system. What I meant was add a bit more usability, a bit more versatility to it. So I think they missed the mark a little bit in trying to beef this up. There's a bigger front wheel on this too. There's a 19-inch, I'm in 6th gear, holy shit. That's concerning. We'll come back to that. There's a 19-inch wheel on the front of this, but it's an alloy 19-inch wheel. So really, it's kind of a weird choice. If you're gonna go with a big front wheel, why not spoke it out? I mean, they have tubeless spoked wheels now, so it's not unheard of. Or even put a tube in it, who gives a shit? But a 19-inch alloy wheel is kind of a weird, I don't know, kind of a weird choice. And it makes it, it makes it taller, obviously, but it kind of makes it weird in terms of that nimble, maneuverable handling that the old version had. I think it has a 17 up front on the old version. So that's an odd thing. I mentioned I'm in 6th gear. It's funny, I have a gear indicator. I was listening to the engine. I was putting along at 40 back in that controlled speed zone. And I was like, okay, we're coming into national speed limit. Let's gun it now. And I went to upshift. I thought 2 gears from 4th. I thought I was in 4th from the way the bike was handling in 4th gear. And I was already in 6th, which is kind of upsetting. I mean, I'm pinned now, and it's really taking its time getting up to 70, 75 miles an hour. It doesn't feel like it has the same tuning. I won't say it doesn't have, because I don't know anything about how a bike's tuned, but it doesn't feel, I don't know, can you hear that? It feels like it's working really hard. It's at 5,000 RPM, 67 miles an hour, and it feels like it's really running high. It's spinning really high. It's working hard in this 6th gear. I'm a little let down by this new version. I don't know if they've played around with that engine. I've mentioned a lot in my past videos about my 2005 Yamaha FZ6 and how that was a real sweet spot of a time to buy the phaser, because the very next year they tuned it all weird and it lost its real punch, and then they tried to make some fairing changes and aesthetic changes, and they just lost it. They lost the magic of that bike. This bike is really straining, it sounds like. I don't know if you guys can hear it over that Discovery singing on the pavement, but it really sounds like it's straining. 71 miles an hour at just shy of 6,000 RPM in 6th gear. It's not as punchy as the old 500. And I am higher, and this windshield is higher as well. And I feel higher, but I'm getting a bit battered by the wind a bit more than I did on the old bike as well. And I have to say, this really long extended riser off of the triple tree here is sending a lot of feedback, a lot of vibration into my hands. It's a very vibey bike, especially 5,500 RPM, 68 miles an hour, 6th gear. Lots of vibration right into my hands, and unusually a excessive amount of vibration into my feet, which are falling asleep. The other thing I noticed is that the gear selector on my left foot, they've done this weird kind of linkage system now with this really long linkage bar, and I'm riding on the balls of my feet as opposed to kind of in the arch of my foot that I normally would, because the gear shift lever for my left foot is incredibly close to that foot peg on the left side, and that is upsetting to me. It reminds me of the new Interceptor where I had an issue with the same thing. I have to point my toe like a ballerina, slot it in, and then shift the gear. And if I leave my feet, the same thing, if I try and put my arches on my pegs, my feet feel a lot more vibration there. Not bad out on the highway, other than these vibrations at kind of cruising speeds, which would make it a lot less comfortable than the old CB500. Seat is exactly the same. I looked at it side by side, and the seat is exactly the same. So there's nothing really that's changed about that. It's as comfortable as it was. But these vibrations in my hands and feet make it less comfortable. I was really looking forward to trying this bike out from when I saw it at the motorcycle show, because it seemed to tick the boxes that a lot of people, including myself, had concerns about. Oh, that's interesting. Slipper clutch they've added, and then the downshifting is nice, even though I think I need to adjust that shift lever because it's a really awkward position. Nope, it's linked. There's no real adjustment there. So that's upsetting. But the downshifting with that slipper clutch is a lot smoother. They said it was to prevent the rear wheel locking up when you're coming down fast from speed and downshifting. I don't know if I've ever experienced that. I definitely didn't experience it on the old 500. Another change, maybe it's a positive change, this bike sounds meaner. I don't know if you can hear that. The exhaust note sounds like a bigger bike. Just missed the gear. Comes up to speed nice. Very windy around my shoulders. I'm sitting higher than usual. Really strained. Fourth gear, 4,000 RPMs. It sounds like the bike's working really hard. Fifth gear, 60 miles an hour, 5,500 RPM. Lots of turbulence right around my shoulders and head. It's almost as if the wind is coming right off the sides of those. The wind is coming right off the sides of the windscreen and hit me right in my shoulders. I am built like an Adonis, so, you know, my big Captain America shoulders catch the wind often. Nice little kind of punchy torque between fifth and sixth gear. Shifting gears, I'm still getting that nice power going up through the gears, but I'm up to sixth gear very quickly. I feel like the bike is straining in the lower gears, and that's an issue for me. It doesn't seem to be an issue for a lot of people who are running through the gears. Seat height is higher than the last bike, so I am, instead of being flat on my ground, I'm on the balls of my feet now. It's not an issue. I can get flat with just a little, my foot is flat on the ground with just a little lean to the left side, which is encouraged by UK bike instructors, so I guess that's not too big of an issue. Okay, so now the sun is right over my shoulder and I can see my display quite clearly. So maybe they were so concerned with the direct sunlight that the reflection from all other points of origin create reflection. That's really weird. So now that I can see my display, I'm really enjoying it. It does sound meaner. There's a nice tone to it. There's a weird kind of tappet sounding from the engine. Like clicking of lifters, there's some rattling a bit that's coming from the engine that I hadn't noticed in the older versions either. It's only 59 miles on this bike and it doesn't look abused. I mean, I'm not abusing it all that much because it's not one of those bikes that asks to be run through the ringer. Most demo bikes are victims of people who are trying to test the limits. The CB500X doesn't really ask to be pushed to the envelope, which is one of the reasons I like the bike so much. Got some crosswind here. Bike's relatively stable with the crosswind. I thought maybe being a bit higher up it would be more vulnerable with the crosswind, but it's not. I mean, I'm going 40 miles an hour about, and I'm in fifth gear, and it feels like the right gear to be in. But what's the point of having four other gears if you're in fifth gear at 40 miles an hour? I mean, you don't need like a lot of that low down torque. I wonder if they've changed the tuning because people are trying to put these off-road and make the first and second gear more usable in kind of low speed technical situations. But I can't imagine everyone using this bike as an off-road alternative, even though there's a lot of hope for it there. But the changes really didn't make it more off-road spec. So that's a bit of a stretch as why the tuning is different. It's not as enjoyable as the old one, and I think it's about 500 quid more than the old one, and I can't see why the slipper clutch and the LED lights and the new display is going to justify that 500. I think I would much rather find one of those previous generation ones and get a bargain on it. I think they were going for like $4,000 or 4,500 new before the redesign came, and I think that's a superior bike. This is one of those bikes that's trying to fit this. You know what they've done? I cracked it. I cracked it, everybody. You're welcome. They have made this into an NC 500X. It's no longer a CB500X. It's an NC 500X. It is a 500 cross tourer. They have taken the vanilla, lifeless bullshit that they injected into the So they've taken the generic lifeless bullshit that they injected into the NC700 and the subsequent NC750X and the Cross Tourer, and they've finally made this a cross tour. Maybe they were upset that everyone wanted this to be the Mini Africa Twin, and instead of making it the Mini Africa Twin, they removed all doubt, and they've made this the Mini Cross Tourer, which really sucks, because I do not like the Cross Tourer or the NC750. I think they're kind of, I don't know, they're appliance bikes. Expensive appliance bikes. They're the Honda Accord of their motorcycle line, when the CBs were really the Civics, or the Civic Rs. Who wants an Accord? We all want the hot hatch, man. And they've taken the hot hatch, and they've made an Accord out of it. Yeah, I'm not happy, not overly impressed. I mean, as I'm whining about this, I'm doing wonderfully through this filtering, so the balance is still there. I do like the commanding height of it, so I do not like how low the brake pedal and the gear shift lever are, and I don't like shoving my toe in there because I feel real trapped. But maneuverability wise, this thing is quite nice. I thought the 19-inch wheel might be an issue, but it's not. It just makes it feel a bit more wobbly at the low speeds. Yeah, that's funny. Second gear is behaving like first gear, so maybe they have done what I've thought in terms of gearing it for lower maneuver stuff. A bigger wheel helps you with rolling resistance, so it helps you get over obstacles, but the side-to-side maneuverability makes it a bit awkward, kind of wobbly and floppy on one side or the other. Well, the traffic warnings did not disappoint, and I'm getting a real run of how this thing maneuvers through the city, and it's doing well. I wonder what the benefit of the added vibrations might be. It feels more rumbly. The sound, the exhaust note and the vibrations make the bike feel more mean, feel tougher, and I don't know if that's addressing some concern that I was not aware of. A bit harrowing through here. Yeah, second gear is acting a lot like first gear. I wonder how usable first gear is then. Yeah, very twitchy and torquey there. Yeah, it'll rev high, but it kind of complains while it's doing it. I don't like that sound it's making. It's kind of like when your kid eats its vegetables, it whines the whole time. It's doing what you're asking, but is it worth it? Is it worth the insanity? Yeah, 45 miles an hour, I should be able to sit in fourth gear. I'm at 4,000 RPM, which is fine. I should be able to sit here, but the vibrations into my hands and the whining that the engine's making is saying shift, so I'm shifting it's kind of riding like the black cabs ride. Black cabs always rev really low. They're diesel, they have low RPM, and they shift very early for the low RPMs to conserve fuel. And that's how this thing is riding. It feels like it wants you to shift early for some sort of conservation benefit or not to strain the engine all that much. So it's not that fun. And I don't like sitting up with my balls of my feet on these pegs. And every time I go to change lanes, there's a stupid Honda horn there. Man, the vibrations are buzzy. This thing buzzes more than my Royal Enfield. 50 miles an hour, 4,000 RPMs, and I feel like I need to shift. I'm gonna go up to 6th gear now just because I can't stand these vibrations. Yeah, that's more comfortable. But now I'm at 50 miles an hour, and I'm gonna be at 4,000 RPM, right where that buzzing is. I'm gonna get some sort of comment that says, let it run. It's got all the RPMs, it got the range. It's got the range. It's got the range. Let it run. No, I don't want to listen to it. I'm always looking down at this thing. Yeah, now the sun's off my right shoulder here, and I just see my helmet in the reflection. No idea of what's going on my display. Yeah, so they've ruined it. Aesthetically, they've made it nicer. On paper, you know, they did some of the things that people have asked them to do, including myself. So I only have myself to blame for the fact that they've f***ed up the 500X. And for some reason, I've took it out for a longer ride than anticipated, so now I have to sit on it all the way back. Yeah, tick, 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 tick. Ticks like a black cab, too. Maybe it's appropriate that the one they're marketing heavily is that matte black one. I don't know if you hear that. Do you hear that buzzing? I hear it. That would drive me nuts. I had an old Jeep and the lifters tapped like that. Though I wonder if these indicators would mount on the old version. Yeah, that was interesting. I wanted to see about the gearing. I just pulled away from that light at third. So first, second, and third all do the same thing. So, I mean, I wonder if I could put that on the old version. I wonder if these indicators would mount on the old version of the bike. New display, even though it has the gear indicator on it. I can't see it anyway with its reflection, so there's no point in having that on it. There are some aftermarket gear indicators that people have been putting on the old versions, which I think are like a tenner, so that's a solution. The third gear is nice through town, 18 miles an hour. I think the problem that this has, I'm comparing it to its older brother. It's trying hard, and there are some things that, yeah, it definitely feels bigger than the other one. There's some things that it's working at, but it's falling a bit short. It doesn't have the same, what? It doesn't have the same spark as the old 500. But if I was to compare it to other bikes that I've ridden, this should still be a contender. It's just not as good as it was. So yeah, by itself, decent bike. There are niggles to it that make it a bit less spectacular than the one that came before. Oops. Honda horn. Christ almighty. If you like that video and you want to see more like them, hit like, share, and subscribe.